So would anybody like to start with a question or explore a particular topic, or just some general sharing of where you are, how you're feeling at the moment, just so we can get things going for today?
I can start, Ragi.
Thank you.
Hello, good to meet you good to see you after all this time. Same situation here. I'm in Tuscany in Italy. Fortunately in the countryside, in a very beautiful place. So I'm not suffering the curfew as much as people in the cities, because in Italy at the moment is very strict. You can't even run around, you can't go for a walk. You can just go shopping for food, and that's it. And well, until a couple of days ago, I managed quite well, also because I'm quite used being on my own and I'm in a beautiful place. But the last couple of days, I started to feel an anxiety. I'm feeling actually scared. And what scares me is more, it's not the virus really, it's more what's happening in the meantime, because I have this gut feeling that other things are happening that we don't really know about. What I know is that in Italy, in a lot of cities, they're cutting trees and they're installing 5G's antennas in these days when we can't even go out. They're gonna use drones to check on people, to check that people don't gather. Basically, there's gonna be drones flying over Milano, over the cities. I don't like this idea of Bill Gates, of this hypothesis of mandatory vaccination. There's a lot of scary stuff that in the last couple of days really got me, and not feeling well, actually. I have an agitation, I feel an anxiety that, yeah, until I knew already about these things, but until, I don't know why, since a couple of days, it became quite uncomfortable. Yeah, is my...
So, I can't, and I don't really want to comment on all the different theories, because to be honest, I don't know. I do spend a bit of time looking at the news, but I don't read a lot of it at the moment. I haven't for many years, actually. But I do know there are lots of different theories going around. I do share your concerns about 5G. But what I think could be useful for you and for everybody is if we look for a moment at the mechanism, at the structure of how anxiety and worry and fear appears, and what the consequences are in our mind, in our body, in our heart, in our energy field. I think that could be useful if you'd like to explore it that way. Yeah?
Yeah, I do. I don't know I don't know the truth. I don't even care. There's a lot of theories and I will probably never know what's going on, but I'm much more interested in managing myself than knowing.
That's right. Somebody's just sent a message saying in Poland the same. So I think it's happening in many different places. And for sure, as the weeks and months go by, we're going to see more information about what's happening. So we have to wait and see what unfolds. But what can we do, or is there anything we can do for ourselves right now? What do you do when you experience this kind of anxiety, this kind of fear? Do you have any tools that you use which can be helpful to others as well?
Well, I didn't need any. I mean, I've practiced a lot of things, and now I haven't needed any tools. I just, when I had a little bit of fear, I just calmed down or mm, redirected my attention to something else. But when it goes beyond a certain point, I don't. And I mean, and the way it is right now, I don't really know what helps.
Right. So I was talking to a group of people last night, a group of people from Ukraine and Russia, and a similar theme came up. And one of the things we agreed on was that sometimes when there's these strong thought structures in our mind, there's actually very little that helps in the moment in terms of another thought structure, another belief, another explanation, another mental story. It doesn't really help in the moment. So if we look at what could help, then some way of taking our attention to different parts of our body, exercise, breathing, mantras, affirmations, things like that, which take the attention away from the mind and onto some other kind of object. The object could be a sensation, it could be a movement, it could be a sound, etc. So if you know something like that, when you experience this very intense anxiety, mental anxiety, fear, then try that in the moment and see if it works. And we can try something together in a few minutes, an affirmation. Because if we look at it purely as energy, it's a build-up of energy in what we call the mind, in the intellect, and particularly the thinking mind. So the habit is to keep focusing on that thinking and that thinking mind. And that's a habit we've learned through our life. So we're trying to change an old habit. We need to recognize that. And it does take time. Now, the other thing is that for each of us, there'll also be what I call a biological reaction.
So, they neither told the woman to come back and do the cut.
Oops, that's my my mother downstairs. So this biological reaction is part of our programming, and fear is also a biological reaction. Anxiety, we can say, is coming from some mental belief, some mental story, but the fear itself is a biological reaction. And some kinds of fear are very useful. So we could be having a biological reaction from the body, from the energy field, from the emotional body, which is linked to a mental story, which is linked to a belief, which is linked to a future projection, future imagination. So that's why sometimes dealing with it only at the intellectual level doesn't actually take away the biological reaction. And it doesn't take away the totality of the anxiety. So we need to look at ourselves as a mechanism with what I call 4 different parts: the intellectual part, the emotional part, the physical part, and the energetic part. And then our tools, if we do have tools, or when we learn new tools, will satisfy these different parts of our being, but will also be a combination of trying to achieve some kind of balance with all these parts. So if we look at it in terms of the mental story, try and be very specific, if you can, what the mental story is, what the thinking mind is saying, and try, if you can, to go to the limit of that story. In other words, what are you thinking, what are you imagining is the worst case scenario for yourself and for others. And you will start to see a pattern, not just with this particular story, but maybe with other stories that are coming up from time to time. And then one very useful technique, and I draw on the work of Byron Katie, which is very simple. It exists outside her work as well, which is just to ask ourselves, is it true? So we've become aware that we're experiencing the fear and the anxiety and the worry. We've identified what the particular mental story is, what the thought pattern is, what the future projection is. Then we ask ourselves, is it true? And it's a yes or no answer. Yes, if the answer comes up, yes, it is true, what we're worrying about, what we're anxious about, this belief, this story. Then we go to the second question, can I know it is absolutely true? Can I know it is absolutely true? And usually with the second question, we will have an answer, no, I can't know it's absolutely true. And in that moment, we've created a space. We've created a space between the mental, intellectual story, worry, anxiety, and what we call the witnessing part of ourselves, the observing part of ourselves, the awareness part of ourselves. There's a part of ourselves that is watching this worry, watching this anxiety. But because the thinking mind is habitually claiming loudly that it is right, it is correct, we can't come back totally, we can't taste this other part of our being, which is watching, which is aware, which is witnessing. So sometimes with a question, a form of self-inquiry, all we're doing is we're creating this space. It's a kind of a little pause. Is it true? Can I know it is absolutely true? And then if the answer is becoming clearer, no, it's not true, then we're already starting to change the habit, which is for the ego to only listen to the thinking mind, or to most of the time listen to the thinking mind. So the power of the thinking mind starts to diminish, we can put it that way. It also gives us an option then to see, well, what else is happening? What else is true? Who am I if I'm not just this person, this being that is worrying, anxious, fearful? What am I? Who am I? And what would you say to that? If I ask you then, if you're not just the fear, the anxiety, the worry, what are you? Who are you?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I'm the body too. I am the presence too. I'm the awareness. I am the observer.
Yes.
And also the mind, and also what happens within the mind.
Yes. That's right. So,
and in this moment, actually, I mean, you're totally right. In this moment, I'm very in the mind. I mean, it takes away. I mean, the whole. It takes over, basically. This intensity takes over, and it's difficult.
So that's why, that's why I say, if you remember to do it, when what we call the mind, what I call the thinking mind, has taken over so much that we can't hear anything else, then we often don't even remember to try these different techniques.
Yes.
But if at a certain moment from memory, it comes back, I can try this technique, then we have that little bit of space, and then we can increase this space.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as you point out, sometimes it's not possible. So that's why I say then, we try and use other tools, I call them tools, so movement, breathing, affirmations, stretching, whatever you can, to shift the energy away from this center of our body-mind organism. Yeah? And that will also create some space. Now, if it's a very strong habit and we're in an energy field with other people, let's say in the house or the village or the city, where this is in the energy field of what we call human consciousness, then it's actually not easy to step out of it, to create this space. So then we need to have other tools, like, for example, putting up little post-its, putting up little reminders, sticking them to the mirror, to the fridge, to wherever we need to try and remind ourselves that this is a tool that could work. Yeah? So see if you can develop a series of different ways to bring yourself back to this place where you remember there is something I can try to do to shift this energy, to create this space, and then to go into self-inquiry. So if we just try it now, again, is it true?
I don't know if it's true. I mean, this question was really useful listening to you. I'm just asking myself, is what I'm fearing true? I don't know.
Right. Then the second question is, can I know it is absolutely true?
No.
Right. And in this moment, when you say no, how do you feel?
I feel better.
Right.
I feel a little bit of space. And then I noticed that another thought with another projection of something else, which is still bothering me, started. So it's like the mind has, since a couple of days, the mind has started a habit, a process. I mean, something got activated, and but yeah.
Yes. So just before we come on to what you've just said, if you can, from this space that's being created, try and go a little deeper and then ask yourself, then who am I or what am I if I'm not just either this mental story, or if I'm not just the mind, or if I'm not just this fear? Something like that. Ask yourself that and see what comes up.
I start to feel more my body, and I'm feeling my belly more, and I'm feeling a little sense of warmth, familiarity of.
If you ask yourself now, once again, who am I? What am I? What comes up?
A little more awareness in the body, then an opening of the awareness, and a silent mind.
Right. So this is what I call the taste. And each time we bring ourselves back to this taste of this other part of our being, then the habit can actually change. It might be quite slow. It could happen suddenly. Yeah? But it's a reminder simply that there is another part of ourself which is actually not touched, not affected by what the thinking mind is saying. And you will know that from previous tastes.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
So the more we experience this so-called taste, then it becomes very clear I'm not just the thinking mind. I am also this presence, this awareness, this silence in the mind, this space in between thoughts. Yeah? Now, it seems that if we do this regularly, progressively what starts to happen is then when the old thought structures, when the old beliefs appear in what we call the mind, this knowing, this taste, cuts off the thought, cuts off the involvement. Now, it might not happen straight away because this is an old, strong pattern, this belief, this thinking mind habit. But it seems like the more we taste it, the more we inquire, and actually also the more intellectually we understand I'm not just a thinking mind, then these thought structures, this thinking mind that reappears, has less and less power, or it comes up and at a certain point it gets cut off. And this is actually what we're doing in large part with these satsangs and these spiritual concepts, is a form of retraining, re-education, reconditioning. Yeah. Now, what you've touched upon is that in situations like this or other situations in our life where we start to experience more stress than normal, something old might be triggered. And it could be something that's been quite deeply suppressed or repressed in what I call the cellular memory. And it gets triggered.
Mm-hmm.
So then we need to find, in my experience, tools which can help us to clear or clean, reprogram the cellular memory. Yeah, and we've talked about that a bit before. And one of my favorites is Ho'oponopono. So if you want to, you add that to your toolkit, and you just go straight into, I love you, sorry, forgive me, thank you. I love you, sorry, forgive me, thank you. One of the reasons I like it is because we don't have to go into the story. We don't have to go back into the past and remember what happened. We're using it as a cleaning agent, an affirmation, a tool. Yeah? 10, 15, 20 minutes. You can be cooking at the same time. You can be exercising. You can be dancing. You can be doing whatever else you want. And in the background, you're just repeating this. The other thing I really like, and I find quite effective, is the conversation with the inner child. Because part of this fear, this discomfort, this suffering that's being triggered is probably connected to some experience which we've had from our childhood. It doesn't have to be from our childhood. When we say inner child, it just means that part of ourself which is still trapped in those early or old beliefs and is reacting from those memories, those experiences which are remembered, which are in our cellular memory. And if we understand that as a mechanism, then the experience, the memory, the experience happened, and there's a memory from it. And the memory has an energetic, physical, emotional component, as well as a belief component. So we can work on the beliefs if we become conscious of them, but we might also need to work or clear the emotional charge, the energetic charge, the physical charge. So see, as you explore this, what it is. Get a sense of what it is. It's probably not just an intellectual fear, worry, anxiety. There's something else in the body, isn't there, which is coming up. Get a sense of what that is. And paradoxically, even though most of us don't like this moment of stress, this moment of confinement, maybe this moment of restriction, it's actually a beautiful opportunity It's a beautiful opportunity to do this deeper healing, to do this deeper clearing, cleaning.
Ragi, could you speak a little about how do we do this kind of a deeper cleaning? A bit more about it.
I'll just come on to that in a second, Seema. I just want to check back with Nicola. How do you feel at the moment, Nicola?
I feel that some part of the system has come down. I feel grateful to you. And yeah, I mean, the inner child trigger doesn't come to me immediately clear at the moment. But yeah, at the moment I feel that some part of me has relaxed and the mental part is still ready to start with some attack, let's call it. But I really enjoyed, I really liked the sequence of questions that you brought up.
Okay. So just lastly, what comes up for me as you're sharing, Nicola, is that part of this experience that's being triggered, if there's an experience being triggered, or if there's a trauma being triggered, is to do with how our nervous system has learned to cope. So with trauma healing, it's very important to understand that it's also to do with the nervous system. And that's why often people don't experience any long-term relief by using techniques only for the mind, or even only for the emotions, or a combination of mind emotions. We need to acknowledge that it's the nervous system that needs some healing, needs some comfort.
Yeah.
What we're experiencing right now is actually that's what's happening. That our nervous system is relaxing. Something is happening in our nervous system. So that's why we feel this temporary release, or temporary calm, or peace, or happiness. But for the nervous system to heal more deeply, then we need to acknowledge that some kind of a regular practice or therapy, some kind of regular method could be very useful.
Okay.
And there are some very, very good ones out there. One of them is called TRE, I think. And we actually don't necessarily have to talk much. It's to do with feeling, coming back to the body, subtle movements. It's a very beautiful system. There's quite a lot on the internet. Otherwise, what we often experience is we feel good after a session, or even after a group session like this. We feel good after a one-to-one session with a therapist, or after a group session like this, or some other session. But then it comes back shortly afterwards. Particularly if we're still in the environment, in the energy of the trigger. Yeah? It can be, I think they call it an emotional flashback. It can be an energetic emotional flashback, which takes over. Yeah? So recognizing that it's to do with the nervous system is really important.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel that my nervous system is a little shaky at the moment, and I'm next to my parents at the moment. So
Yeah.
It is a triggering field.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anything you know that works for your nervous system, even if it's something like a herbal tea or natural oils, salt baths, anything even physical that you know helps you to reset the nervous system, so to speak, to heal the nervous system, doing that on a regular basis gets the cellular memory to understand that there is an alternative to this reaction. Yeah. Sometimes, of course, we need to move away from the trigger, and that's the healthiest thing to do. We don't have to force ourselves to stay in the triggered energy environment. Moving away from it if we can is the thing to do. But if we can't move away from it, then we do have tools, we have the capacity to help ourselves.